are live. Back again. It's been a couple of weeks. We've had a lot of activity, and there is a lot to talk about because there's a lot of stuff floating around on the internet. But let's recap. So, February has featured one storm, which featured snow, rain changing to snow. We had some snow accumulation with that. Of course, the interior did much better. Then we had an event that almost no one got right, where most locations were forecasting 1 to 3 inches around the New York City metro, 3 to 6 inches around the Philadelphia metro, especially towards southern New Jersey. And then about 6 to 12 inches fell right in central New Jersey and destroyed that forecast. Premium members, you know that you can go to the storm section. I explained exactly what went wrong with the forecast, which was very, very interesting. And since then, it's been a little bit quiet, chilly, but nothing too unusual. Certainly no Arctic blasts or anything of that nature. And the winter overall has featured a lot of weak to moderate events, light to moderate snowfall events, but no major storm. You know, like the 12 to 24 inch region-wide type snowfall where the I-95 corridor gets shut down and all that good stuff. And I said back in October, this winter was going to come down between whether or not we have near to below normal or near to above normal, basically whether or not we get that one storm. And it looks like that's exactly what is going to be taking place for this winter. We'll have a full overview of the winter forecast and what actually happened in the first live chat in March. But basically, the idea of, look, this winter's basically going to come down to, especially in the I-95 corridor, northern mid-Atlantic, whether or not we get all the ingredients to come together to produce that major storm. Looks like that is going to be the reality. And this year, we just have not had the ingredients to come together. We've been close, but close doesn't give you the storm that you want. Now, there is a lot of noise out there. And one of the objectives I have when I started this whole feed and the whole company and everything was not to be the most popular, but to be as accurate as I possibly can be. Now, if I wanted to be most popular, I'd put out social media posts about the most epic month, pick a month, March, let's say. March is going to be the coldest month and major winter storms and just make over-the-top posts, right? Back then, it would be, let's see here. It wasn't Facebook, it was MySpace. And you can even put a little song with it, so it's pretty cool, right? So you could do MySpace, you could do your weather forums, but you can, the point was to generate clicks. The more clicks you got, the more visibility, the more popular you are, and then maybe the more money you could drive. That has never been my objective. As much as I would love to say, hey, look, March is going to feature a lot of snow, that's not really the reality. So what I want to do tonight is show you what's happening. Yes, there is a major stratospheric warming event, but timing matters and location matters. So I'm going to show you that. And also we're going to talk about the first possible thunderstorm event, possibly some strong, maybe an isolated severe thunderstorm that I'm going to be keeping an eye on over the next 10 days. So definitely check that out. And then, of course, I'm going to take your questions for anyone that's new. We answer all the questions in the premium live chat because they're premium members. Then after that, we go to YouTube. And, of course, we check out X to discuss what we're seeing and answer all the questions on there. So let's see here. And we already have some good questions already from Card. Card Shark is one of the premium members that has a lot of great questions about the weather pattern, especially about the stratosphere and whatnot. So I always count on him to provide a lot of interesting questions to make me say, interesting one. So let's take a look at some of the data here that I've been looking at. And we start off with the stratosphere. Obviously, we're having stratospheric warming. Now, remember, it's not a one-to-one ratio in terms of the time here. It takes time for the stratospheric warming to impact the troposphere, where we live, right? So this is all in the stratosphere. The troposphere is lower where we are. That's where we're talking about 500 millibars and whatnot. So clearly we have warming. And the model guidance clearly supports that warming. So you can see the 12Z guidance coming out here continues to show this major stratospheric warming. And this, of course, is not a surprise. And it pretty much has worked out well with the forecast of the QBO. If you remember back in October, I said, look, there's going to be a lot of major stratospheric warming events this upcoming winter. There's going to be a lot of potential for disruption of the polar vortex, and that at least puts you in the game, puts you in the stadium, right, to have some interesting weather. And that idea worked out very well, all right? So as we move through March, this factor is going to start to fade away. Why is it going to fade away? Because the polar vortex is going to start to fade away. So we continue to see the influence of the East Base QBO. And I want you to just remember that, because as we go to next fall, this is going to be another important factor. When we have a West Base QBO, it's not impossible, but it's a lot harder to get a major stratospheric warming event, especially with an active solar sun. Okay, so when you have a lot of solar activity with the sun, that means you're breaking down a lot of the ozone in the stratosphere, so it allows for your polar vortex to strengthen even more so because you have an overall cold environment. When you have an East Base QBO, it kind of counteracts that, and so that's what we've seen this winter. So we continue to see that. So the stratospheric warming that we're seeing now falls right in line with this idea. Perfect. But here's the problem. Here's the problem with everyone running around saying, oh, look, major stratospheric warming, i.e. cold, active March, cold winter storms, looking for winter storms. It's on the wrong side of the globe. Location matters. Okay, so it starts off towards Eurasia. Now, why is this important? Well, you see, when you have this disruption taking place and it's over Europe and over Russia, okay, all the focus is initially on that side of the globe. And so what happens is that this part of the jet stream, when we get down to, let's say, 250 millibars, okay, is that you start to get troughiness, and you're already starting to see that pretty nicely here around Eurasia, but you also start to build this zonal jet. This is starting to form here over Pacific that just runs roughshod across North America. It has to happen because there has to be a balance. You cannot have deep troughs all over the mid-latitudes. At some point, at some place, you have to have a counterbalance. You have to have a way of balancing out all the mass displacement. So this is very basic law, very basic physics law, all right? Conservation of mass. So you have this conservation happening here. So there must be a location where it's zonal, where it's quiet, where you have a Pacific flow, which we're talking about North America. So that's our starting point, and that's where we're going to start with March. I think that's pretty well supported. So then the idea is, like, okay, well, eventually the polar vortex is going to shift towards North America. Fine. Okay. If this was December, I would say game on. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Sure, we got about 8 weeks. Not a problem. We just have to wait a little bit. This is late February. Right? Late February, right? Late February, right? Right? Yeah, late February. Okay, so it's late February. So, see, we got 10 days. So that takes us into early March. By the time we get to this point, let's say we're using the GFS. So we finally get our split, right, to set up. Oh yeah, it's kind of focused more towards Western North America, but let's just say, hypothetical, that it lines up perfectly, drops right towards the Hudson Bay. By the time you get that influence in the troposphere at 500 millibars, you're in mid-March. Technically, could you get something? If you got a polar air mass timed just right, if you got blocking just right, and the timing just right, then maybe you could squeeze out a very marginal polar air mass setting up on the coastal plain if all the precipitation happens between, let's say, 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. That's a lot of ifs. Certainly not something I'd want to advertise to any of my subscribers or any of you, right? So, considering what we've been through this winter, forget this winter, the past 5 years, is it responsible to take a look at this data and advertise active, cold, stormy, snowy March with these conditions? And the answer is no. What we have here is a signal for an unsettled March, a kind of a cool March, raw. That's going to be the key word. Raw and unsettled. If you have, let's say, the first week of April, baseball games, going to Yankees, Mets, Phillies, whatever, Orioles, okay, I would say plan for a heavy hoodie to go to those games. I think, honestly, as far as opening day and like the first, let's say, first 3 weeks of the baseball season, all those games should be during the afternoon. Because I don't see how it's comfortable or healthy for the pitchers, by the way, to have those games at 7 o'clock when you have temperatures in the 40s. And sometimes even in the 30s. I mean, I remember in Chicago, they had snow. It was ridiculous. Don't even get me started on Colorado, don't please. But this is certainly not a warm pattern in any way, shape, or form. But not a snowy pattern either. So I don't understand. The reason why I'm really commenting on this is because I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it in my emails. I'm seeing it on social media. I'm seeing it on our Discord forum. People running around saying, oh, look, it's going to produce a snowstorm. No. Just no. Take that stuff. Anyone that's telling you that stuff, take it up in the ball, throw it in the garbage. It's a waste of time. Because by the time that pattern establishes itself, you're in mid-March. The sun angle, forget about it. Anything that's going to happen during the day, you're going to have to get intense lifting, timed at the right time, to overcome a very warm boundary layer, which, by the way, we're going to be in the 50s and 60s to start March. So your ground is already warm. So I just want to make that very clear. And so what that looks like in the 500 millibar pattern, we can look at the European here. You can see over the next 10 days, we shift. There is that Pacific air mass driving across the country. Again, you got this bow shaped here because you get this trough here. You're getting all this displacement taking shape on the other side of the Earth. And that's showing up here on the GFS. And remember, at the same time, your polar jet stream starting to contract and lift northward, which is typical for this time of year. And you're seeing the same thing on the European guidance. And if you want to go beyond that point, you could take a look at the European. Now, again, I think we've all learned, do not take this stuff verbatim. I've said this a billion times, but I think if anyone didn't believe me, we got a very, very good lesson this winter where we were expecting well below normal temperatures for the entire winter, really from late December till February. How will that work out? That was a huge fail. So I wouldn't take this verbatim. But what this generally tells me is that you have a pattern here that's unsettled. You have a pattern where you're probably going to get with the trough axis. Look at the trough axis, kind of focused out here. So what does this tell me? Maritime air masses. Pesky upper level lows around, like, let's say, the Gulf of Maine, around Long Island or east of Long Island, easterly flow, overcast skies, drizzle, just raw, disgusting out, that type of scenario for mid to late March. And that's going into April. When I see that signal here, this screams to me, not winter storms, not snowfall, but backdoor cold fronts. So yeah, not exactly the best. I know everyone wants to go from cold winters to warm springs. This is more like a so-so winter to a very raw spring. Not my favorite type, by the way. I like warm springs, but certainly the potential for near to above normal precipitation. Again, take this with a grain of salt with how cold this is, but let's say trending towards near to below normal. Not exactly the best conditions. Now, let's talk about the potential for thunderstorms. So we got our first low pressure system that moves through on Friday. Very, very benign. Maybe a quarter of an inch or half an inch of rain. Not that big of a deal. Warm front goes through. Cold front follows. No big deal on Thursday night into Friday. There could be a little bit in the Poconos and Catskills. Watch out for a little bit of snow and sleet. We're talking about way on top of the mountains. You have to go way up top there. And you might get some snow and sleet. Dusting. Okay, not that big of a deal, but Friday morning could be some slick roadways. So just use some caution there. But do we have thunderstorms? Well, next Thursday, it's going to be pretty warm. You're going to have a strong shortwave coming in, and I like the slight negative tilt here. You see this right here? This spread right here opens up the potential for a little bit more divergence and diffluence. Then at 850 millibars, you had this very well defined trough showing up here. So we have some divergence and diffluence and the potential here for enhancement of our subtropical jet stream, our low-level jet stream, should I say. And of course, at 850 millibars, not bad, warm temperatures, talking about temperatures in the upper 50s, maybe touching the upper 60s. We get enough sunshine around the Delaware River Valley. And then you have that strong cold air transport. Now, I know that some people are looking at the GFS with this. Basic rule. If you're looking for snowfall, again, I got a couple of questions on this. If you're looking for snowfall in this scenario, the problem is that you never want, especially towards the end of winter, you never want to trust a forecast where the cold air is trying to catch up to the moisture, especially with this progressive type of low pressure system movement, where your primary low pressure system is focused in the St. Lawrence River Valley. So this is clearly a cold front passage and not anything else. I know the GFS is trying to show something, but if you really dive into the data, you can see that it's not the best scenario for anything like that. What it does show at this time period is your potential for thunderstorms. Why? Well, we have warm air surging in, plenty of moisture. We have a strong frontogenesis, strong cold air transport with the cold front. In the upper levels, we have divergence and diffluence, so you're having that jet streak enhancing the winds. And then at 850 millibars during the same time period, more importantly, at the right time. Meteorology, a lot of it has to do with timing. And during this time period, it's happening in the middle of the day. Why is that important? Well, unlike in the middle of the summer where you have instability almost all the time, during this time of year, it's really, really important. And you're having this in the middle of the afternoon. So you have your potential for increased instability. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. But you also have a pretty good jet streak here. So This tells me that we have the potential here for our first line of thunderstorms for, I guess, let's see, this is on February 29th, so it's on leap day, so kind of pseudo last day of winter. And you have a pretty good support for a line of showers and thunderstorms. Most likely it's going to be a weak to moderate line of thunderstorms, followed by anti-front precipitation. That's where you have rainfall behind the cold front. So one line moves through and then periods of rain for the rest of the afternoon and evening. So certainly something to keep an eye on. Some rumbles of thunder for the last day of February heading into March 1st. So something that we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on to see how that evolves. With that, I am going to now take your questions. We're going to start, of course, with the live chat area here. And then we'll go visit YouTube and see what's popping over there. And not a lot of questions in YouTube just yet. So we'll see where that comes out. And of course, we're moving into that time of year where the length of the chat really depends on you in a way. I do my usual spiel to start off. Then I answer all your questions. If there's no more questions, then we come to an end and I rest my voice. If we have more questions, as you know, like in the heart of a winter storm, I'll go to 9:30 if I have to answer all the questions. So that kind of depends on you. So we'll take a look and see where that ends up. So let's see what we got here. Second year in a row, polar vortex stretching and split went to Asia. Yep, that's part of why I warned. And one of the things I said with the winter forecast is, hey, look, location matters. If this heads towards Asia or heads towards Europe, then we miss out. Now, part of that polar vortex stretching did occur over North America, which led to our active weather pattern. So that certainly worked out. And we had high latitude blocking. Problem is that the polar and subtropical jet stream, when the pattern was favorable, didn't have the best alignment. And so we missed out on the blockbuster storms. Did notice there is a ton of warming at both 10 and 70 millibars. Yep. But the orientation is terrible for North America. Exactly. If one wants cold air, and it is too late in the year for another shot at winter storms, it seems. Yeah, pretty much. Again, if this was happening 2 weeks earlier, then I would say, hey, look, things could get really interesting towards the end of February. But now we're pushing things towards mid-March. And when you get to mid-March, you have to understand that, is it possible? Yes, there is. Meteorologically, it is possible. But so much has to go right for that environment that it is irresponsible to advertise it until you get some really concrete data to really support that type of outcome. Andrew is excited about thunderstorms. I expect a lot of people are going to start getting excited about that. I know one person in our Discord is going to be very excited about that. No tornadoes yet, though. So, any indication what the strength and orientation of La Nina is likely to be? Really hoping for a weak east base. Do not need the huge heat dome building into the Appalachians and Midwest. I'm not sure about the orientation and strength yet. I'm still working on that. I like the idea of La Nina really taking hold in June. I like that idea. I'm concerned about the tropics because the Atlantic is already starting out warm, above normal, so I'm worried about that. But as far as the strength, there looks like there's some support for weak to moderate. Orientation is kind of a mixed bag, so I'm still working on that and still gathering data on that, which I plan on starting to break down with the spring forecast that I'll have out towards the end of the month. Given the weather luck the New York City Metro has had the past couple of years, I'm confident the day of the eclipse is coming up in April will be cloudy if not raining in our area. Yeah, I can understand that feeling. Honestly, I can. So the sun has started to have flares and CMEs from the poles. Yes, it's been increasingly more active, which I understand is a sign that magnetic fields are at the tightest in the sun's polar region and is at another sign the maximum is very close. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the sun goes through maximums and minimums every 11 years. Okay, so 11 years ago, which takes us back to a very active time period. If you remember, in the early 2010s, well, let's say from about 2009 to about 2012, where we had some very active winters and some pretty impressive high latitude blocking. Well, that also happened to coincide with a quiet sun. Okay, so that was your solar minimum. Why is that important? Quiet sun allows for your ozone to build up. Your ozone builds up. It allows for a warmer than average stratospheric environment. Doesn't necessarily mean stratospheric warming, but your base is higher because you have more mass in the stratosphere to allow for better disruption of the polar vortex. So when you have an active sun, you have more solar activity impacting the upper ionosphere and stratosphere, which allows for more breakdown of your ozone. When you have more breakdown of the ozone outside of, let's say, EP flux like this year, which allowed for more warming to take place, what it does is that it creates an overall colder stratospheric environment and stronger polar vortex. So what we have right now is that we're reaching that maximum, which means all the activity. Once we start moving away from that, the solar activity drops off and we start to get more days of blank suns. More days of blank suns means that your ozone starts to build up in the stratosphere. So we're going to be watching that. That's way long term. And there's still a lot of research that still is going into understanding the influences of solar activity and the weather. You cannot do solar activity and use that to forecast a winter storm, for example. It's more of a large-scale overview of the whole climate system. Not just like, oh, look, the sun's quiet, therefore a snowstorm. No, it doesn't work like that. But it gives you an idea of the overall theme that's going on in the stratosphere and troposphere and whatnot. Paul asks, you briefly mentioned that we are setting up for a warmer than average late spring and summer. Is this due to La Nina returning? What factors are going to cause a warmer than average summer if it happens? Well, typically when we see a La Nina take place and we get the southeast ridge to build, your storm track is going to be focused more towards the Great Lakes, which puts us more on the warm side of these cold fronts and low pressure systems. If we get a strong enough ridge, sometimes that leads to drought conditions and very hot summers. I'm not sure about that yet, but I like the idea of above normal temperatures. The one caveat and the one thing I'm really keeping an eye on, that I'm going to be watching the theme, is to see whether or not we get a trough stuck around the Gulf of Maine and around the Canadian Maritimes. I've been seeing some hints of that, and if that's the case, then we got to factor in backdoor cold fronts, and that could put a little bit of a delay on that idea for spring. So I'm watching that and seeing if I can gather more data and see if I can nail that down, see if that gets displaced more towards Iceland or if it stays closer to us, which would lead to more backdoor cold fronts and just a lot of unsettled conditions. But the idea is based on, well, if La Nina is taking hold, you're going to see that storm track shift more towards the plains, cutting up through the Mississippi River Valley, a lot of severe events, heading up towards the Great Lakes. So you're talking about Michigan, you're talking about Ohio, you're talking about the eastern Great Lakes, and then we get that cold front that swings through. Now, the thing that could really be really interesting for us is that if you get this heat dome built in and then you get these cold fronts clipping through, that could produce some really dynamic severe thunderstorms dropping south from the eastern Great Lakes into our neck of the woods. That could lead to some very interesting and dynamic severe thunderstorm events. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. Any thoughts on whether the summer will be above, below, or near normal for precipitation? Again, this kind of depends on the orientation of La Nina. Typically in La Nina, you do have better potential for some drought conditions. Your subtropical jet stream is weaker. It's displaced to the northwest. You get more of a southeast ridge, which increases your tropical influence. So, on average, that typically leads to below normal precipitation values. Of course, any type of tropical influence would, of course, throw that off quite a bit. All you need is one hurricane or one tropical storm, or not even tropical storm, a remnant tropical depression lingering on the mid-Atlantic coast, and you end up with well above normal precipitation for the summer, which pretty much all happens in the span of a couple of days. So we'll have to see how that evolves. It's fishing weather, if you don't mind the raw weather, because it's the type of weather the fish bite in. I'm going to take your word for it. I do not fish. I don't even like eating fish. I like tuna fish. Does that count? I don't know. Does that count? Shrimp. I like shrimp, but I'm not really much of a fisher or eating fish or anything like that. Susan, you like sushi though, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. Susan likes all the sushi. I get her the sushi. Me, not really much of a fish guy. Do you anticipate flash flooding being an issue this spring? Not this time. But again, keep an eye on it. Of course, tropical considerations in the summer and next fall, that might be a different issue. Severe and tropical seasons get some large chat precipitations numbers as well. Oh yeah, totally. And based on the experiment that I did with this winter with the winter storms, doing the live coverage and doing the videos, I plan on trying to do that with the severe thunderstorms. We'll see how that works out. Severe thunderstorms are a little bit trickier because there's sometimes where they just kind of pop up and you don't really have time to do the live coverage. But we'll see. For those major region-wide events, I'm going to try to pull that off. I'm not that good at that. Not as far as forecasting, I'm fine. But as far as doing the timing and getting that all set up, we'll see how that plays out. Something I'm going to try and see if I can expand into the surface, so to speak. Severe, let's see here. Reminder, the sun angle of the third week of March is the same as the third week of September. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so what would you say if I sent out a post saying, hey, it's mid-September, we're going to have a snowstorm? You'd think I'm nuts, right? You should, by the way. You should think I'm nuts. If I actually send that out, send help, there's something wrong with me. That's essentially what is being sent out on social media. Yeah. Okay, now look, there's historical references of major storms in March and April, heck, even September and October. But understand, those are very rare, and they're historical for a reason, because they barely, if ever, happen. And when they do happen, it's because conditions came together in a very unique way. It's not something you want to put out there in social media or any media for that matter. It's something that as you get within 24 hours, you start to say, hey, look, things are starting to come together. It's pretty unusual. And even then, you have low confidence that it's actually going to pan out. Let's see. Jonathan Cohen asks, I'm wondering if extreme variations in snow totals over the past 15 years is due mostly to climate change or chance. We went from the snowiest period on record in 2009 to 2014, then the least snowy from 2019 to 2024. Okay, so I'm just going to stay focused on the northern mid-Atlantic. We've seen this before. In fact, again, I would go and use northeast snowstorms. And pull it out here from my library. Okay, now Northeast Snowstorms by Paul Cosin and Louis Uccellini. Pick this up from the AMS. Read it. It's very important. All right, if you're interested in winter storms, if you're a young meteorologist, if you're just interested in the weather, or you have someone in high school or whatnot, or even middle school who's interested in the weather, get this book. Now, in this book, you will learn that we've had decades where we had very snowy winters and decades where we've had very quiet winters. The discussion on climate change and how winter storms are being impacted is a very complicated one. And it's not one of 1-to-1 ratio or hey, global temperatures are warmer, therefore no snow. It doesn't work like that. Okay? So, in terms of this pattern, the difference between an event, a winter of well above normal snowfall, and what we're experiencing is a difference of essentially, in each one of these events, maybe about 6 hours. If the short waves interacted 6 hours just right, the cold air just right, you're talking about at least 3 events where we could have had over 12 inches of snow in each one of those storms, if everything aligned just right. But they didn't, so we don't, right? The climate aspect comes into a variety of different issues. So if the cold air was in place, you're still dealing with a unique environment from the urban heat island effect, which leads to more convective precipitation. So you can end up with more mesoscale banding, which would increase snowfall totals. There was a lot of talk about that in 2009 and 2010. Hey, global warming means more snow. People jumped the gun on that. Also, because of the lower, warmer environment, and you get cold air temporarily coming in at the mid-levels, you also increase instability. So higher potential for thundersnow. Okay. Another factor, higher precipitable water values. More water in the atmosphere because the atmosphere overall is warmer. So now you have more snowfall events where your snow ratios are a little bit closer to 10-to-1, 12-to-1, but you're dealing with a lot more moisture, so you can increase your snowfall storms and your overall snowfall potential. On the other side, because of the warmer environment overall, polar and Arctic air masses have the potential to moderate faster. Part of that is due to the way that we've built. Part of that is the warmer environment overall. You cannot say that a stretch of above or below normal snowfall is directly connected to climate change, because this factor has been ingrained in our overall climate as a mid-latitude temperate climate for centuries. This isn't something new. This is something that we've experienced for centuries. Take outside the little ice age, which no one wants to experience. Trust me, everyone talked about, oh, look how cold it was before pre-industrial. Yeah, we had an ice age. No one wants that because that's famine. Like, hello, that's not good either. So you cannot make blanket statements saying that climate change means less snow, or that the pattern that we have right now is going to be the same thing we're going to see 2025 on. Now, I will say this, something that is catching my attention with what's going on in the Pacific is more support for more La Niñas. That is something that has my attention, because it's very rare to get 3 La Niñas in a row. It's happened before. The question I have, I don't know this answer yet, is are we going to see another double or triple La Nina again? We had our El Nino. Usually it's kind of a one and done scenario, and then we go back to neutral or La Nina. So that's nothing unusual. The question is, do we go to La Nina and then stay in La Nina? Or do we go to La Nina and then go neutral? Or even back to El Nino? Don't know yet. Obviously, that's way off in the future. But that could be a climate influence. But we don't know yet. I certainly don't know yet. So we'll have to see that and see how that plays out. And let's see what we got. Oh, look at that. We got YouTube flowing in here.
And Twitter.
And Twitter.
Whatever the hell it is.
X, Twitter.
X-Twitter. Yes.
X, Twitter.
Yes, they broke
X, Twitter. They broke up. There you go. Let's see what we got here. We'll check out YouTube, and then we'll check out Twitter, X, whatever. And see what we got in there as well. Let's see here. What did I miss? Nothing. Okay, so I know where the Delaware River flows, but what landmass constitutes the Delaware River Valley? Ah, great question. Okay, so that's actually a really good question from YouTube. So actually, let me go pull up a map here. Let's see here. You know what? Let me duplicate this and see if I can zoom in here for a minute. Bear with me. I'll use the HRR because that's pretty much clear right now. One sec. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the Delaware River Valley is essentially this area right here. So you have your Poconos and Catskills up here. You got your Lehigh Valley. And you got your Delaware River here. And your Delaware River Valley is essentially this area right here. Now on a temperature map, it's pretty easy to find because typically your Delaware River Valley is where, especially in the summer, you get your really hot and humid weather conditions really enhanced. And it's typically right around the I-95 corridor, right? So you get this kind of tongue of hot conditions right in here. So that's essentially what we're looking for, right around there, right in the Delaware River Valley. And you could really see it really well. The next time that we have temperatures like in the 80s, take a look at the temperature map during the day, and you'll see this kind of tongue of very warm temperatures right in this area. It's around Philadelphia, Trenton, Monmouth County, Ocean County, Burlington County, southwest New Jersey, right in that area, southeastern Pennsylvania, right in that ballpark. So no severe, nothing widespread as far as thunderstorms, as far as severe thunderstorms. Not there yet. We got some time. We're not there yet. I don't see any support for that just yet. I know, there's some people that want to see that, but I don't think we're there just quite yet. Let's see here. We already talked about the El Nino to La Nina. Where did the measure of millibars comes from? Oh, wow. That's a long discussion. No, I'm going to have to research that. Off the top of my head, I don't remember. But I believe that I want to say the Germans actually started that. The Germans or the English, one of them started that. I do not remember. That's like Met 101. I probably should remember that from my history class, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. It's 8:44. Come on, give me a break. But yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to research that. What's the difference between East and Central based La Nina? Okay, much like El Nino, The difference between the central and east base La Nina, and we can even include west base, is the influence of substance that influences your tropical, your storm, your thunderstorms in the tropics. So, if you have your coldest water towards, let's say, South America, then you have the potential for more thunderstorm development around the date line, which slightly enhances the subtropical jet stream and displaces your southeast ridge more towards the Bahamas rather than towards the eastern Gulf Coast. And then if you have your coldest waters around the date line or to the south and southwest of Hawaii, then that typically supports a ridge basically around the southeast that could build up into the northern Atlantic, and you get your Bermuda High, and it's just ugly out there. So that's generally the difference in a nutshell. Are you surprised how poorly the models did showing all the cold air? Let's see. I want to answer this very carefully. I wasn't surprised by the magnitude being off. I was surprised by, okay. I did warn about this in the winter forecast, saying, like, I don't buy how cold it's supposed to be. I think these cold air masses are going to be marginal. I actually said, I have it written, so if you want to go check it out right now, that's why I left the winter forecast up there. I was never impressed with the state of the cold air masses because I was never impressed with the snowpack that was developing in Siberia back in October. So I never really bought into it, but I was surprised with how. I wasn't surprised by the cold air. I was surprised by the blocking, by the 500 millibar configuration, because not only the GFS, but the European ensembles, the Canadian guidance, all of it. Now, when you have all of those models, all pointing a raging negative NAO, a deep trough over the east, a ridge right up the Rockies, on all the guidance for multiple runs, you would think at least once it would actually lock in. Okay, so maybe not the whole winter, but at least once it would lock in to produce that major winter storm pattern. It just didn't. It came close, real close, but close doesn't give you what you want. Close gives you 3 to 6 inch snowfalls. So I was kind of surprised that it didn't lock in once. And if I bought into that because one model showed it, that's bad on me. I'm very curious when we do a model post-analysis of what caused the guidance to show that and why it didn't work out. That's going to be very important to understand for our climate models, to see what we need to fix. Where did we miss? What caused that displacement? Because, like I said, it's one thing when it's just one model and you just chalk it up like a model, just bad data, something happened. When all of them showed that and none of them actually verified to the extent that they were supposed to, that was surprising. That caught me by surprise. Because typically when you have all of them, that's from pretty strong confidence. Okay? That would be akin to having all of your synoptic models, let's say the GFS, European, and Canadian, 2 days out, or not even 1 day out, showing a major winter storm, and then you get some scattered showers. That's essentially what happened there. So I was really surprised by that. Why does every time models forecast a cold and snowy pattern, it never ends up verifying? Okay, here's the thing with cold and snowy patterns. When they happen, you have to understand what came together was that everything came together just right. This is why when we talk about 1995-96, it's kind of like the unicorn. Okay? That was the unicorn year. 2009, 2010, unicorn year. Because in those rare instances, everything locked in perfectly. If you watch ice skating, it's the perfect triple lux 10 out of 10. You have the potential to do it. It's really hard to pull off, right? It's hitting for the cycle in baseball and ending with a grand slam to get your home run. That's what that is. So when you see those cold and snowy forecasts, what do I always say? Potential's there. Don't buy into the details. Why? Because the ability for the weather pattern with all this chaos to consolidate and support that type of pattern, how many times have I seen it? Twice. And I'm 44 years old. Twice. Or as I like to say, 4.4. Twice. That's not a lot. That's why it's so rare. Because everything has to come together just right. MJO phases. Remember, when you're looking at MJO phases, they're very weak too. All right, so here's the thing with tropical. When you're looking at all of these phases, like when someone says, hey, look, the MJO. Yes, the MJO shows this. But it's not the only factor. So here, let me see if I can pull up the MJO real fast. Okay, good. So let me pull this up real fast. Pull up the forecast. And where do we have the MJO going to? Well, the general idea is phases 3. We've got some 4s. Maybe a 5. So what does that mean? Now remember, while that's all showing, it's incredibly weak. Okay? So the signal is not very strong. So it's not a dominant signal, right? The dominant influence in the pattern is clearly what's going on in the stratosphere and what's happening with the polar jet stream. So let's take that. And then what does that mean as far as temperatures in March? So we got this. And it kind of gives you a mixed bag. You have in phase 3, you have some cold below normal. Phase 4 is above normal. Phase 5 is a mixed bag, colder towards New England. Phase 6 and 7 is very warm. Phase 8 is chilly. Phase 1's a mixed bag. But this does not happen in a vacuum. So you have to take this signal and then combine it with what's happening in the polar jet stream. So remember, this gives you tropical forcing, which has a stronger influence on your subtropical jet stream. But you cannot just take that and say, well, it does this, so it must be this. You must take all this data and combine it together and get a complete picture. See what it got on X here. Let's see if I can pull that up here. Oh, hold it.
You got it?
I think I might have it. Or not. I don't know.
Alright, let's see what we can do here.
Does it sound good for total eclipse? Yep,
Stay
we'll
here
keep an eye on that.
April 8th.
Return to winter after our little warm up. No.
About the eclipse, aren't we?
Yeah.
From what I saw, aren't we like we're only in the range to see a partial anyway, right?
Yeah, if you really want to see it, I think you have to head off towards the Ohio River
Yeah,
Valley.
exactly.
Let's see here. Usually March in the past used to bring destructive nor'easters for the coastal plain with coastal flooding. Potentially. Um, but,
Wait.
yeah.
Damaging winds. That's
Damaging
all
winds. Do you see that potential this
that's all the
March?
same thing.
Right now, I do not. I do not see any. Now, does that mean that, something can't pop up March 20th? Sure. But I'm saying, like, right now, I have no data to support that potential. So it would be irresponsible for me. And by the way, I know that some people are running around using the CFS model guidance. For those of you who understand model guidance and resolution, the best way I could describe the CFS is, again, I'm probably dating myself here. There's a model that's called the MRF back in 1998. That was the precursor to the GFS. That resolution is the resolution you have for the CFS when you use it for storm forecasting. Don't use it. That's not what the model is meant to be used for. What other we got? Big fan. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I appreciate it. Very much. Okay, I think, let's see. Wow, it's almost 9 o'clock. What do you know? Let's see here.
Let's see. Boris, best place. That's like several questions going at the bottom on YouTube.
Okay, let me
I don't know
go.
if you got 'em all.
I think I got them. Let me get card axes. It looks like West Coast is going to get pounded by a series of storms. Shame they haven't built any new reservoirs. You'd think they would by now. Oh well. Newark, New Jersey area is another hot summer hotspot. Yes, that part is more connected to urban heat island, going right up the I-95 corridor into New York. Except the La Nina after Tonga eruption, where the water vapor gave us a roaring subtropical jet during La Nina. Yeah, that was pretty weird. I think that influence is starting to dissipate. It's still present. It'll be present for the next decade. But I think that the intensity of the influence on the troposphere is starting to back off. It's starting to subside. Safe to say we're done for winter for Lakewood area. My snowfall total for the whole season, a whole 8 inches. Hey, better than last year where it was -8, right? So, yeah, I mean, look, I never like to say that something can't happen in meteorology because then most likely you get slapped in the face by it. But this is not going to be very favorable going forward, especially at the start of the month where we're going to be close to 70 degrees. Not exactly the best environment for snowfall, okay? I'll keep an eye on the pattern, obviously, but certainly not favorable. I'll put it that way. And I think that answers everything for tonight. So we had a wonderful live chat. This was great. Questions were outstanding, as always. I really appreciate it. There's some stuff I had to research, check up on, like when did we start using millibars? That'd be a good one. But I would say that I really appreciate, of course, all of you guys coming in asking wonderful questions throughout this winter. It has been a very interesting winter season, that's for sure. Next week, we'll continue to check up to see, we'll have more data to see whether or not we're dealing with strong thunderstorms. And the first live chat in March, we'll go over the winter forecast and go over what went right, what went wrong, how that all worked out, why some things worked out, why some things didn't, and then go and get ready for spring. So, again, thank you as always for visiting and for joining the live chat. And as always, stay safe out there.